Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of REFU-SERIES. My name is Atieno. This is REFU-Poet. We're a space that uses art to tell refugee stories of trials and triumph. And we have existed for quite a while now. This is our third year. And we are doing things a little differently. We are having or hosting online conversations, just talking about the various issues that affect refugees. And we have had this conversation throughout this week and last week, and we've been tackling various topics. And today we are tackling a very interesting and fun topic, the topic of art, the topic that REFU-Poet actually has a lot of interest in. And with me today, we have guests, really interesting guests and panelists that we are going to be interacting with. But before I ask them to introduce themselves, let me just say, if you have any question, any comments, anything you would like to tell us, please be sure to post it on our comment section on Facebook and YouTube, because we're going to read them out. Maybe ask the questions to the panelists if you have anything that you need answered. Also, let me remind you that this Saturday, that is in 1 day, on Saturday at 6 p.m., we're going to be hosting the Try My Shoe online festival, where we're going to be celebrating the World Refugee Day using music, poetry, and dance. So we have refugee artists and we have Kenyan artists who will be joining us and sharing with us pieces of their art, and it's going to be really, really, really a fun experience. And I would encourage you to follow us on our Facebook at REFU-Poet, Instagram at REFU Kenya, YouTube at REFU-Poet Kenya, so that you do not miss out that session. So without further ado, I would like to now introduce our guests. So I'm just going to bring in Isaac and ask Isaac to tell us his name, what he does. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Isaac. My name is Isaac Wanyango, whom I work with Filmate in Kakuma. My title is I'm a media training manager, so I oversee a 1-year media training. We do an annual media training program where we train students on filmmaking, journalism, photography. And all this comes along with an entrepreneurship aspect, basically to enable them be able to sell their skills in media and journalism. I also oversee other Filmate activities, which are outreach activities. We go into the community to disseminate information that the refugees and the host community need to be able to make important decisions, basically on health and their safety. So we do radio programming, we do mass awarenesses where we go into the communities with in a caravan. We do evening screenings, which currently due to COVID we cannot do. These are tracks of a cinema, and we go into the various parts of Kakuma and Kalobei settlement to disseminate and provide information, psychosocial relief content to the communities. So in a nutshell, basically that's what I oversee here at Filmate Kenya in Kakuma.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Let me welcome Mordecai to introduce himself.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Mordecai. I design programs for Filmate. I'm the program director, and my role involves using research as well as the feedback we receive from communities to design humanitarian and development projects, communication projects that would address social issues that are affecting the community using film and other forms of media and art.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mordecai. Let me bring in Enigma to also introduce himself.
Hi, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes. Is it possible to increase your volume just a little bit?
All right. Let me see. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, awesome. So my name is Enigma Creative. I am a storyteller. I am filling in for somebody who couldn't be here. But to answer the question, I work with a collective known as the Anika Initiative, and basically we package spaces for artistic expression on social issues, and we feel that the refugees need to tell their stories, and we are excited at how our experience in the space of artistic expression can be used to allow them the leeway to tell their stories. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Enigma. Desmond, karibu.
Hi guys, my name is Desmond, I'm director, but I'm also the organizing member of REFU-Poet. I'm going to be helping Faith in moderating the conversation, and I hope we're going to have an amazing time. So yeah, let's get into this and see how this goes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Desmond. So let me kickstart this conversation, and the conversation of today is art and refugees. So perhaps let me bring in Isaac and ask you, Isaac, how would you define art in your own words?
In my own words, it's a tricky one.
Yes.
I think art is an expression. Art is an inner expression with a lot of freedom to it, but it comes in various forms. So at the most basic level, it's just a free expression of whatever somebody is feeling or would want to portray. It could be expressing yourself and then subjecting yourself or opening yourself to the people, and comes in various forms. It could be the form of written content. It could be the form of visual expression, whether it's painting, or if you are a storyteller and you want to use film to express yourself and your feelings about a society, about an issue that affects a given community of people. I believe all this comes in the form of art. So I wouldn't really say that I have the perfect definition of it, but I believe it's just an inward expression of the feelings of a person in various forms.
Thank you. Let me still just ask a follow-up question. So you work with Film Aid in Kakuma, and film is a form of art that Film Aid uses to tell stories. So maybe would you expound to us on what kind of films does Film Aid take? What is the process like, and who do you involve in those films?
Film Aid works in three ways. We are in content generation, we are in media training, and then we are in community engagement, which is basically outreach programs. So if the kind of arts that films that we make falls in those two categories, film made by students, and then films done by Film Aid as an organization meant for outreach activities. So for films made by students, this is as an any art, we do not control the kind of art that students come up with. All we need to do is basically guide them towards being able to tell stories that resonate with their communities and speak of their issues and their journeys as refugees in the camp here. It could be journeys from their countries of origin to here, and the hope for the future. So the process basically for making student films involves a 1-year training. So within that 1 year, we have 6 months where it's theory and practical work based on ability to handle equipment to make films. And then the other 4 months is working on their films and in terms of scripting and production. So students are allowed to express themselves and come up with stories. And then we, as trainers, we guide them on what aspects of a story needs to be told, how should a story be angled. We also invite experienced filmmakers from Nairobi to come and work with them, sometimes Nairobi and beyond, to work with them on how to tell these stories in a way that is compelling. So it is about them having a focus on their communities, eliminating issues that affect them in their communities, and bringing it to the fore. That's one way that we allow students, we work with the students to develop content. In the other way that we develop content with this film content is these are content that are commissioned by our donors. So based on needs assessment, if there's a need in a community, let's say for instance in Kakuma, we work on content, film content for that addresses girl child education. So basically that's, for us to develop such content, we have to be informed by a need for information to be disseminated in the communities that we address. So we do a needs assessment, we engage the community members because we cannot develop content that goes to them to address their issues, yet we do not know whether that issue really needs addressing. So we involve the communities to come in the participation to work on the content that we require. And then we develop the script. Once the script is developed, we again go back to them that this script reflects what you told us. When that it goes through approval, then we develop the content, bringing all aspects of production into place. When the content is produced, then we come again back to the community for a pre-screening. So we pre-screen the content so that it's given a clean bill of health that you can use this, because as we know, we might want to address an issue, but then visually whatever we have captured probably offends a given section or part of the community. So we have to again pre-screen this content to ensure that it really addresses the issues that they had brought to us and we had shared, but it also doesn't offend any aspect of a belief system or religion. So essentially, that's how we work in developing the content that we work with. First of all, there has to be a need, and then the need is addressed using the content with participation from the communities that we serve.
Thank you so much, Isaac, for that comprehensive answer. So let me ask Mordecai, why is it important to film aid to tell these stories using film? Why at all are you involved in making films?
Well, it's our mission as an organization. FilmAid was born in 1999 by a filmmaker. Karen Barron is the founder and has been supported by a lot of partners from the film industry. But then film and other forms of art, including theater, music, poetry, painting, drawing, that FilmAid uses to address social issues, have been seen as an important avenue to address concerns of communities, to influence and demand accountability. Refugees and host communities have been at the mercy of narratives that are told by social media, by national TV, that might not be the true nature of how things are, or of what their experiences are, or of who they are. And so art takes on that role to provide them with a platform to tell their own stories, to address their own concerns, to correct perceptions, and also to inform communities, but also not forgetting that art is a form of self-expression. So FilmAid still is a firm believer in protecting the creative, artistic space that allows communities to showcase their culture, showcase their beliefs, but also has seen the important role that art plays in demanding accountability.
Thank you. And I think I also want to ask a follow-up question. Throughout this series of conversations, we've been talking to different people, and we saw that one big hindrance to integration is the attitude, especially the attitude of host communities towards refugees. And you, as FilmAid, having been involved in the making of films to tell stories in order to change narratives, to change attitudes, what would you say is the impact of that? Is there any change that you have experienced as FilmAid and said, by us showcasing this film, we've been able to change a lot of attitudes and narratives, and now, we can see that host communities and refugee communities are living in harmony?
It's work in progress, for sure. And you can look at change at different levels, at individual level and at community level. At individual level, when artists from the host communities, from Turkana or from Somalia, Kenyan Somalis work with Somalis from Somali, or refugees work with Kenyans in music projects, and they have done that a lot in our experience. Then first of all, a change happens at individual level. Some level of tolerance is adopted. People now are able to understand each other and why they're different or why they're not so different. In fact, many times they're not so different. What differentiates them is just language, but they're not different in any way. And then that tolerance is developed. But at community level, then these artists are working in communities. They're using businesses to do their music shoots. They're performing in markets that are shared by both refugees and host communities. And they start to appreciate each other's cultures. They start to see why it's not important to be different or not so different, and even come to appreciate why people think the way they do and why they do things differently, and also start to appreciate the similarities, especially the similarities, and that then also now expands that tolerance to the larger community. But FilmAid also goes a step ahead to ensure that this content is available online, that we organize cultural events. Now FilmAid supports the celebration of UN calendar events. I call them UN calendar events because they'll be like what we are having right now on Saturday, World Refugee Day, the Day of the African Child. Some of the events are like 16 days of gender activism, but we use these platforms to showcase different cultures in these communities. We have dance groups, poetry, singing from different communities, and our experience has been everybody jumps into the stage and starts dancing to these different tunes, and that is still a demonstration that it is effective to use art to kind of break down these biases, this intolerance that people have towards people who have migrated from other countries or towards each other.
Thank you so much. So let me bring in Enigma Creative, and ask you, you're a creative and you've said you're a storyteller. I know you're not a refugee, but perhaps could you tell us why do you engage yourself in artistic activities? Why at all do you tell stories?
Hello. Yeah. So okay.
Hello.
Why? Yeah. I'm audible now. Yes. Okay. So why do I tell stories? When you stand in front of people with a microphone and you perform for them for whatever length of time you have them, let's say it's usually 3 to 5 minutes. It is 3 to 5 minutes of unfettered time. This is time that they listen to every single thing you're saying. And I'm sure FilmAid know how captivating stories can be when you have a movie and people are engaged and watching, and the conversations that are spurred from it. I feel like this is the most underrated power that artistic expression has. And for me, as an artist, as a storyteller, the few minutes I'm on stage is the most impactful, because that means I have like 5 minutes to impact on an audience, which means for me, the message I choose to package is one that I feel should be able to inform the audience that's listening to me on an issue that I feel they should really be knowing. Like for instance, now what we are doing with the REFU-SERIES. Because right now, people who tune in, say for example on Saturday, will get to have a better understanding of what the refugee situation is, and we will have achieved more than we will be able to measure, at least for now. So yes.
Yeah. And Enigma, you will also be part of the REFU-SERIES production that is happening on Saturday. perhaps tell us how has your experience been, having to write a piece that, has to be aligned with the issues of refugees, or even interacting with the various refugee artists that we have had on REFU-Poet. How has your experience been?
When you meet these refugees, you only see them as refugees for the first 5 minutes of the introduction. Beyond those 5 minutes, you see a human being who craves for the same things you are craving for, who wants the same successes you want, who admires the same people you admire. I was talking to someone, he's called Prince Israel. He's going to be on the feed. And we were talking about a lady who inspires both of us. Her name is Malaika Uwamahoro. So Malaika Uwamahoro is a Broadway sensation, but she's a Rwandan national. And you see, like, we are all the same. It's just that when you tag somebody as a refugee, you already put them in a box that does not allow you to be attached to their human condition. And I feel like this is the space where artistic expression in all its forms can be used to, like, dispel these stereotypes that we are told are true, which we really need to unlearn.
Yes, thank you, Enigma. I think I want to bring Isaac back in, and just as a follow-up to what Enigma is talking about. There's for refugees to feel accepted and to feel comfortable in host communities. It's important for there to be that coexistence, peaceful coexistence between both host communities and refugee communities. So I would like to ask, how does, in the process of you guys making the films, how do you ensure that there is that collaboration between the host communities and the refugee communities to ensure that peaceful coexistence?
I think that's an effort that's made by all partners, humanitarian partners working in Kakuma and Kalobeye, in that in their programming, there is involvement or there is interaction and activities or responses that are given to the host community as well as the refugee community, and it's like as a quota. Like you don't intervene in the refugee community, but that neglect the host community. So as filmed in our content generation, let me begin from the media training. In the media training, we have a quota for the host community as well. As much as we respond to the refugee situation, we provide quotas for the host community. So our media training involves have slots for, in a year we recruit 30 students at least, and then 10 of that has to be slots for the host community, because we understand the majority are refugee communities. Now, it essentially means that if you recruit that number, your vision with it is that at the end of it, the content that comes from that is the content that responds to the refugees and host community. And this art brings people together. We had other programs, Art for Refugees, Art for Refugees. We have Finding a Star project, which was basically a project that was looking for music artists in Kakuma. And these 2 slots, one for the refugee and one for the host community. And they did a collaboration working alongside Kevin Wire. So art transcends, as Creative said, Enigma said, that art transcends everything, transcends boundaries, transcends differences. At the most basic level, we are all humans, and those cravings, you're craving for art, you're craving to make good music, sing to the people, address an issue. And these issues, as an African society, most of our issues are similar. There's no differences. As much as they've fled their countries and are here right now, at the most basic level, the issues that affect them are the same. Poverty, I think, is at the bottom line of it all. And when they come together to speak about these issues, you realize, oh, your story is similar to my story. So let's talk about this. We don't need these differences. So in our programming, we ensure we work with these communities because we understand they live side by side. Refugees, this is not an island. It's not like they are in some island and then all around it's water and then beyond that, what are the host community? They live side by side, they share markets. And so in our activities, we, even in 2017, we developed content called A Journey Through My City, working with other partners, which just basically tells a story about Kakuma as a town, Kakuma as a city, with all the functions of town, where all cultures melt, all tribes, all languages, but at the most basic level, we are all humans. So yeah, in our programming, we ensure that we allow a space, we provide a space where all these communities, the refugees and host community, can be able to interact peacefully. And as Mordecai mentioned, peaceful coexistence and is a work in progress, and it's not just an effort for art. It's an effort by the communities as well to be able to come together and realize we are daughters and sons of Africa, and we need to just be brotherly, and together we can address our issues.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Isaac. Before I welcome Desmond to tell us what's happening on the comment section and everything, let me ask you, Mordecai, right before we started this interview, we were talking about the various programs that FilmAid is currently involved in due to the happening of COVID-19. So perhaps could you share with us some of those projects that you are currently doing, and how people can find them, and just the things you're doing currently despite the COVID-19 happening?
Yeah, FilmAid is involved in quite a lot. FilmAid specifically, FilmAid Kenya, that is part of FilmAid International, and FilmAid International most recently became a project of Internews Network. And so we work in different countries, but I'm going to mention the ones that are relevant to this discussion, which is Kenya as well as Zimbabwe. I mentioned to you that we provide communication solutions using media and other forms of art to address social issues. It involves also kind of harnessing the power and influence of media to address social issues, to allow people to, have honest conversations about issues that matter to them, with an aim to, address those concerns, to increase their knowledge and also their participation to finding solutions. And so COVID-19 has presented a challenge and an opportunity in equal measure. Now, it has opened up other avenues of information sharing that we have existed but have not tried to use before. WhatsApp, has been in existence, and FilmAid is now using it to hold conversations on protection and health, and we're using the power of film to do so, as well as other forms of art. Of course, other forms of art come in the forms of, talking posters, for example, murals that we have been able to use to communicate messages on hygiene, for example, or on participation of girls in school, or the importance of enhancing the protection of our communities, having a gender-based violence-free community, using wall murals painted on school walls or on marketplaces have been used by FilmAid before. And our art forms have transcended so many, genres. We have used modeling, for example. We invited Juma to model with refugees and host communities in Kakuma, and UNHCR took on that project, and Ajuma has now been a frequent personality in Kakuma, helping her community using her art form, which is modeling. And Kiko Romeo was there to support the design aspect of this form of art. And so FilmAid's footprint on different forms of art in the refugee spaces, and not just Kakuma as well, but also Dadaab, has seen us be able to evolve now to the next levels, where now we're looking at art, paying art as entrepreneurship, not just as self-expression, but you being able to, make a living from your art. And so that's why, we even took a different approach to our music project by working with fewer artists and recognized record labels. Waire and his Love Child Records has been partnering with us to to mentor, young artists until they can be successful entrepreneurs. And so, we're not just looking at arts for art's sake. We're also looking at, being able to assist beneficiaries to earn a living from that art. And yes, COVID-19 has presented these beautiful opportunities going online. We have had very good, nice successes of people accessing Facebook or WhatsApp, using YouTube to showcase their art. We just had our latest project that will showcase on World Refugee Day on Saturday, which is a music production on COVID-19, and the title of the music is on YouTube already. It actually speaks about the effects of COVID-19, and this was a project in partnership with Yo-Yo-Ma. Now, Yo-Yo-Ma is a renowned cellist in the world, and he supported 3 musicians in Kakuma to produce this wonderful music video. The music video is produced and recorded by a refugee production company called Exile Keys Films. Now, if you follow our YouTube address, you just go to Filmade YouTube, Filmade, our website, which is www.filmade.org, as well as our Twitter handle at Filmade, and also on Instagram, you'll be able to find, reference to these works.
Yeah, that's really impressive, and it's a blessing to hear that. So I'm going to welcome Desmond to, tell us what's happening at the comment section. Desmond.
Thank you so much, Atieno. So I'm just going to read a few comments from what has been shared. I'll start with Garang Majok. He says, watching you guys from Nakuru County. I'm a DAFI student. So DAFI is a program for scholarship that it was introduced by UNHCR. And then we have Mary Liz. She says, good to be here. Babo is, how do you ensure that the creation remains in the voices of refugees? And I think that one, anyone from Filmade can be able to answer that, since you're more concerned with working with refugees in the camps. You've been working with refugees in the camps, and also people like Kenyans. So how do you ensure that whatever the people from host communities they talk about refugees doesn't swallow what the refugees are actually trying to project or they're trying to tell the masses? And then we have someone called Gerados, and he says, this is wonderful. Isa Mugs Abdo says, watching from the Dub. And she's also a staff he's a staff from Windle International. We have Leonard Hope. He says, I wish you could help refugee youth to realize and develop their gifts and talents. I am watching your program from France. Mildred Ouma says, watching from Gatundu, keep the spirit of service to mankind. Serving others brings contentment of its kind. Kagogo Joyce Kiprop says, great job. And finally, I read from Leonard Hope. He's like, I know refugee life is very complicated, but let all refugees learn through their challenges. It's possible to benefit from refugee situations, my brothers and sisters. Back to you, Atieno.
Okay, so there's a question by Babo, and let me pose it to Isaac. She asks, how do you ensure that the creation remains in the voice of the refugee?
Thank you. A very good question, actually. Because essentially, when we do our media training, when we conduct the 1-year media training, the essence of that media training is basically to put the power of media into the hands of these refugees so that they'll be able to tell their own story in their own voices, so that their own voices can be echoed across the world and to the communities that can listen to them. So we do not muffle that particular voice. All we do is put in the aspects, the skills to use the power of media. And they script their own stories. we get them through scripting their own stories, which essentially means that from the various communities they come from, they have issues that affect them in those communities. It could be social issues. Could just want to talk about maybe satirize political situation back in their countries, or even the leadership, probably the questioning the kind of leadership within their communities. They want to address an issue, a social issue like education. So when they see these issues happening and they see how the media portrays them, they want to demystify and dispel these probably wrong notions about refugee situation, and they want to tell these stories. So when what we guide them through is the development of a story so that it's compelling, but the creative aspect and the true meaning of the stories that remains in their own voices. So and this is the same to the host community as well. We come Kakuma. Anybody who's been to Kakuma, it's an arid area. It has been marginalized. That's knowledge for open knowledge. It's an open secret to anybody who's in Kenya. And these communities, some of them, access to education has been a problem for a long period of time. And if they want to talk about this so that the government is able to address, so that the government understands their issues, we do not muffle that voice. All we do is equip them with the skills to develop content for them, equip them with the skills to develop content for mobile consumption, and
Yes.
the skills to produce camera and tell stories. We do not muffle that voice.
Yeah.
All we do is equip them with the skills to develop content for them, equip them with the skills to develop content for mobile consumption, and
Yes.
develop.
Thank you. Enigma, I would like to bring you back. And I want you to tell us, what are some of the challenges that you as a Kenyan artist, what are some of the challenges that you experience, before I then bring in Mordecai, who can tell us some of the challenges that refugee artists experience and how we can try and mitigate them. Welcome, Enigma.
Okay, so as a Kenyan artist, I want to say that probably the challenges I experience are not alien to myself. They are not alien to a Kenyan artist in this context. I feel like artists everywhere experience the same problems, and it's just a question of systems and structures. So I feel like as an artist, there is very little access or to like professional development in my artistic field. For example, I'll give you a case in context of how many schools do you know that teach art in Kenya? And Kenya, by the way, is a very developed country this side of the Sahara. So when you see the situation of the lack of professional development in skills such as stage presence, vocal ability, and stuff like that, that really enrich an artist's presence on stage and the kind of content they create. With save for a few fellowships which people apply for, which you need to be in a certain class of privilege. You have to know English, you have to be able to know how to apply, how to present yourself, which is not the case for many artists who have a lot of talent but do not necessarily have the abilities to like present themselves on paper so that they can qualify for grants and fellowships and trainings and stuff like that. But attached purely to the grassroots, I'd say the biggest problem I have personally experienced is how art and the artistic process has been heavily commodified to the extent that everybody who interacts with an artist, especially very talented ones, they are only seen as ways to an end, whereby they are used to make money, but they don't get much of it back to themselves. Their art does not work for themselves. And I'd say it's a problem of structures and systems. Because if we structure our systems so that artists can benefit and grow using the systems that have been set in place, then we will have artists creating more content that relates to more and wider audiences, And I feel like this is the place where FilmAid has done most of their groundwork, because they train the artists they engage with on how to do what they do. They, at some point, I have actually been through, I've been to a showcase of FilmAid where they were telling us, they were teaching us. Actually, they were showcasing a few films by refugees from the camp. They actually brought them over to Power 254 here in Nairobi. And so they were telling us about the process. First, the artists are taught what to do, and at some point, they are let to do it by themselves because they've already learned. And I feel like I, as a Kenyan artist, will benefit a lot from a process like that one, which is missing for someone like me. So yeah, I think generally our problems are more or less the same, but it pains me to consider how much more these problems are heightened or experienced deeply for refugees, considering we really do not have the same degrees of privilege.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Enigma. And I think I would like to pick it up from there. Mordecai, if you have anything that you have picked up from what Enigma has said, you're also free to do so. But I would also like to ask how can an artist who is, right now watching us, how can they make money out of their art?
Yeah, I mean, Enigma has actually, mentioned some very substantial arguments, and that plague any artists, regardless of the label you want to put on them, whether they're Kenyan, international, or refugee. It's an exploitative industry to begin with, and without policy changes, without effort by the players to rectify that, then artists would have to find their own ways. And FilmAid has always been a firm believer in looking at the legal and policy environment and working around it, not working with it in order to achieve our goals. So yes, refugees are supposed to be hosted in camps. That means that then the movement is limited. But what are the opportunities then? Because internet is not limited, obviously. And so put their content online. Work with government authorities to get movement passes for them to attend shows in Nairobi. Put them into contact with mentors like Waire, the international cellist Yoyoma, and many others who have, expressed interest to work with refugees and host communities, have been able to host virtual discussions with refugees on how to monetize their money. Okay. The most important thing is for artists to form a network and to be exposed and to work around these legal and policy hurdles that are a bit exploitative. Find other ways to make their work, their art, work for them. And art is both a way to express yourself, but there's also commissioned art. There are a lot of agencies in Dadaab and Kakuma that are paying for art. They are paying a graphic designer to design a poster. They are paying a filmmaker to produce a documentary. They are paying a musician to develop an original music score for a documentary or a drama piece. They are paying for those services. So the opportunities are there. And FilmAid has, been often looking at, what we have done well and what we have not done well, reflecting and improving. And one of the things that we are doing right now is to expose our artists more, to showcase their work for free in order for them to get a following that then allows them to get commissioned work. And it's an industry problem. There are beautiful films that I would want to watch made by Kenyan filmmakers, but they're nowhere to be found. Okay? Because they're produced for a festival. So unless I pay for it, is when I can see it. But it means then therefore we are missing a lot. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know who the artists are and how good they are, because the content is hidden from the general public. And these are some of the things that we need to change. And yes, as Enigma mentioned, exploitative, but working around it, looking at whether we might need to work with promoters that understand, the concept of business, where it's not exploitative, it's more supportive in nature, and looking at other opportunities to showcase this work, hosting this content in paying platforms if necessary, and if they're good enough for people to pay for and to watch, to buy. That's good enough for us. And a lot of corporates are working with artists. Activism is a new concept, activism where NGOs are using art to demand accountability and paying artists for music, and we have seen quite a lot of music out here and other forms of art out here that speak about the inadequacies of governance and accountability, whether it's police violence, whether it's corruption, and if you're a bit more attentive, you'll notice that it's not just art, it's commissioned and it's paid for, by some of the popular donors that we know about, and that's how artists are able to make a living. And they can also teach art. Teaching is also paying form of art. So yes, I'm a musician, but can I teach music? Yes, and from that, I've seen a lot of artists, teaching, drama, teaching how to play a music instrument, and that supports their productions.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think I'll pick up something and throw it to Isaac. So, for example, Mordecai has mentioned about Waire. I would like to know, why is it important to have celebrity mentors carry the refugee flag, or be involved in refugee awareness in form of art? Why do you think that is important at all?
One thing, mostly people do not really buy art. People buy the artist. And when you have mentors who are industry known, people who are already famous, these kind of collaborations bring trust in the ability of the artist who is being collaborated with. If Waire, with his abilities and his renowned, his respected, he's a legend in the Kenyan music industry, works with a refugee artist, that stigma about refugeeism, but he can't sing, what kind of content can come from there? The typical question of what good can come from Nazareth is dispelled. And that's why when we bring artists like Waire, Octopizzo has worked with several artists here, there's that credibility, that belief, that trust that is bought by the people, that, okay, let's listen to him, let's give them a chance. And that's very, very important, because there is so much talent in the refugees. When we began, we do understand that a refugee is a status. It's transitory. It's not something that's permanent. It's not in their genes. It's a situation that they find themselves in. But the talent is within them. The talent, just like Enigma said, our cries, our issues, what we crave for are similar. They can write. We have example of Smart Jabba. I don't know if any of you have as Smart Jabba. He's done tremendous, very good music. He's gone to the trend. He's been on 10 over 10 several times. Very good music that come from here. But that's just an example. So many of them are still confined within the walls of the Dab and Kakuma. Very good music that can come from here. So the only reason why we see Filmmade so fit is that their voices need to be heard. And if the channel that will use their voices to be heard is make them work alongside renowned and already established artists, then that's the true path to go. And that's why we took that path to work with artists who are already established, because it's open to other markets beyond Kakuma.
Thank you so much. And I also think anyone who is currently participating, in this conversation, by listening, by commenting, you're also playing a role in supporting artists everywhere. I can see there's a lot going on in the comment section. So Desmond, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Atini. Joseph Masika, watching from Filmmade, great stuff, and glad to hear about how art and effective communication changes lives. Good to see all of you. Mildred Ouma says, in addition, through art, the refugees express their feelings on what their life is all about. This gives them the will, the zeal, and the power to change or better themselves without the fear of being inferior. Eric Sanders says that he's watching from Dadaab. Martin Mwangi says he's excited about the online show on the 20th. Leonard Hope says, I would like also to encourage UNHCR Protection Department and other Kenyan government refugee protection services to fulfill their work to all refugees. As you know, without refugee security, nothing can be done. Rachel Stephanie says, I honestly feel like this whole conversation on giving artists platforms is an error. I feel like people need to understand that art for some people is a way of living, and organizations ought to acknowledge this. Just the same way we may consider our employees and contractors is the same way I believe we ought to consider artists. Mary Liz says, I wish people learned to buy art and not artists. That is where the biggest gap is. So which brings me back to, this one develops the question that I wanted to ask. Do you feel like different agencies that have been assigned a role to protect refugees have been able to have done their role? For example, Film Aid. Is there, apart from Film Aid, how many other organizations or agencies are supporting artists who happen to be refugees to express or share their stories and kind of monetize their art? Are there any other organizations that are doing that apart from Film Aid?
Isaac, you want to take that?
Isaac, you can go.
The ability of art as a way to address issues or even just be able to speak to communities. Because what, instead of gathering a community to speak to them about a particular, let's say about farming, music is beautiful to the ear. And agencies that deal in livelihood activities have worked with these artists to come up with songs and plays, theater activities, film as well. There are several agencies that do livelihood activities. DRC, the Danish Refugee Council in Kakuma, AHI, Action Africa Help International, has worked with refugees to develop content that addresses or inspires or directs the communities towards farming, towards livelihood activities. So those are just a few examples, but the true feeling or the truth is that there's belief and trust in the ability of work of art in the various forms, poetry, in the form of film content. The groups that we work with and establish themselves as media companies work hand in hand. There's no agency that hasn't used the work of film to try and change behaviors of communities here. So art is a space, as a space, provides a language that transcends boundaries of and transcends the issues that affect these communities and the barriers of being in different spaces at different times is bridged by a work that speaks to the ear, and music is just one of them. So other than Film Aid, there are several other agencies that do use art. I wanted to add something that Mordecai mentioned, that use of art by artists, sometimes there's a very big track of ground for despair by the artists, in that sometimes they feel like art doesn't sell. But they don't realize that I think what needs to be communicated and advised to the artists is that there is a process to being able to be consumed and being revered as an artist, and your content to be of meaningful use to the communities that we serve. There's so many artists who are up there who are now established, but there was a journey to it. Rawaire, there was a journey to it. Octopizo, there was a journey to it. We see it all over the media. So the encouraging that the one key message that artists, the refugee artists need to know is that in all their struggles, and let me call them epic struggles, to have their content consumed and have their content have meaning is through constant creation and listening to the community, having your ear on the ground to ensure that you are addressing the issues that affect your community. Thank you.
Mordecai, do you have anything to add to
Yeah,
it?
I mean, Isaac has summarized it quite well. You know, Freely Made has the position that art is paid for. You know, there's no performance that is free unless the artist has say that I want to provide my, you know, my performance for free. So all art is paid for. We contract people and put them on a contract as a consultant, as an employee, and remunerate them, you know, with very, you know, competitive rates that are industry rates for their work. Huh? And of course, even within the legal, you know, restrictions, like for example, for refugees, we work within, you know, the frameworks provided for paying refugee artists. And most times it's not exploitative. We are always able to find a way to still enumerate them according to the industry rates and still provide and still be within legal standing with the government, you know, especially with regards to taxation. So art is paying. And artists need to understand that, you know, for people to consume their art, there's art for self-expression and there's commissioned art. Our Freely would commission you to produce a music score against a certain T or R. So then you are a contractor, and the creative control is between the artists and the organization contracting you. But there's art for art's sake, which can be, you know, put out there. And if I love the piece of art, if I love the piece of painting, if I love your Ankara design, I buy it because I love it. I saw it somewhere and I buy it from you, you know. So yes, there are two levels we are speaking about here. I'm more conversant with the one that is commissioned art, where we are teaching artists to be entrepreneurs. What do the corporates want from you? You know, what do they want? You know, they want you to do something in a certain way. They want you to, you know, showcase a performance in an event, whether it's dance. It has to be choreographed in a certain way in order for it to resonate well with the audiences. And of course, the artists also need to invest in research, knowing what their consumers want. What do their consumers want? What is their niche in that space? You know, is it reggae? Is it R&B? Is it, you know, is it you know, you need to understand what your consumers want, because your biggest fans are your consumers. Are the citizens that are listening to your music, that are seeing your paintings? You know, those are your biggest fans. So understand your consumers, and it does sell. But yes, I totally agree that sometimes there's a thin line between buying, you know, the art itself and buying the artist, buying the brand, buying the name. But that's the commercial nature of the environment we live in. It's about who, you know, your brand. What is your brand? Can I identify with it? With the corporate, it's about profits, and the brand is very important. And so you have to brand yourself in a certain way that you're able actually to earn from your art.
Maybe just before I end my session and bring in Enigma, I want to read a comment from Millicent. And she says, let's keep identifying opportunities for refugees and host artists to work together and showcasing to the public, to demystify the stories we have heard about refugees. Great job, Filmed and REFU-Poet. So, Enigma, I know you have worked with, you have been using art as a therapy for artists, and you've been able to work with some of the refugees around the region, and you've worked with people who have gone through the Rwandan genocide before, using art as a therapy. What role do you think, just to expand on it, what role does art have like a really critical role when it comes to people, to the mental healing of stresses that people have gone through before? Do you think it's an alternative means towards mental hygiene?
Yes. So I will say art art in as far as I have worked. So I started performing. The first time on stage was in 2012, and between then and now, my own growth and with the people I've worked with, and as you've mentioned, on the like healing for art. There's a festival that is usually happens every year in Rwanda. It's called the Ubuntu Arts Festival, and it's a festival. It's centered around the concept of humanity and how art can be used to heal a lot of, as we know, the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi. A lot of the psychosocial effects of the aftermath of that particular historical event have been healed through art. So usually they curate an entire week experience that culminates in 3 days of art. Yeah. And it was really an honor to be part of like the organizing, the performing, the workshops and everything. But to answer your question, art has a very, very big role it can play. There's something in art we call catharsis. So catharsis is like when you held your breath and then finally you perceive that it is time to let it go. And then that letting go is a release that carries a lot of stress, a lot of stuff away. And I feel like I know we've all experienced catharsis. We just probably didn't know it's called catharsis. But the thing is, artistic expression and the whole concept of art is very, very powerful. In fact, I dare say entertainment is just a byproduct of the artistic process. It is not the main objective. Like art can be used to do so much more. If only the artist is deliberate enough and understands the power they hold and they know what they can do to like channel that power and engage the audiences they have. They have the potential to cause a lot of healing. They have the potential to bridge gaps. They have the potential to start conversations. I mean, if you look at the movement in the U.S. right now, when George Floyd passed away, God rest his soul in peace. A lot of the artists who came out and spoke about it are the reason why the entire conversation is gaining traction, and even now the entire world is coming on board and saying we need this sorted out. When you look at there are cases even here in Africa where, if you remember Mobutu Sese Seko, like there was an entire movement against his authoritarian regime that was inspired by an artist who sang a song and then he had to re-sing it so that he saves his life or something like that. But to say at the very least, I feel that we are just scratching the surface with art. FilmAid is using films and features and basically the stage and cameras and sound. That's one art form. We have the stage like theater where the artist interacts one-on-one with the audience and they have the ability to like, impact a lot on them. I would want, before I hand over to Atieno and or Desmond, to like probably comment on something that was said by a lady called uh, Rachel Stephanie, where she said she honestly feels like the whole conversation on giving artist platforms is an error. And I'll rally back to the comment I made on the fact that it is a systems issue where organizations only absorb information that is structured. They know that you are you are a consultant in, say, accounting. So they want to engage you based on, as Mordecai said, terms of reference. Yeah. So when an artist lacks the understanding of structure, automatically they cannot engage with an entity that uses structure to do its dealing. Yeah, and that's why people in the music industry succeed a lot, because there's an entire industry surrounding it, and a lot of art forms have not been able to build industries that can build potential for them to be understood as systems of structure. And I feel like, personally, as a storyteller, a lot of the work that I do with artists, teaching them on how to write contracts and on what their intellectual property is, what a commissioned work means, who has the copyright of what they need to consider when signing a contract and stuff like that. You need to understand systems and structures as an artist if you're going to benefit from it. There are artists who are right now, they're earning millions of shillings even in this COVID period because they had an understanding of systems and structures that have allowed them to benefit from works they did so many years ago. So I feel like it's a really big conversation. It's a really big conversation, and we need to, like, there's a lot that can be done so that artists benefit from their artistic expression and talent, but also with an understanding of how systems work, because systems can only engage with systems and structure. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, it makes us learn a lot during the whole time. So Leonard, I'll just read my last comment and then I'll let Atieno take over. Leonard Hope Semukanya says, let me also encourage refugee artists to create message of love and peace globally. And for me, I think the lack of love is the main reason why most things happen, why chaos happen. If we lack love, we lack understanding, and that creates chaos as we go on. So as I leave the moderation to Atieno, let's love each other and hug someone a little bit tighter. Okay, past Corona, not now. So Atieno, please take over.
Yeah, thank you guys. For me, I've been just listening and learning so much from all of you. And I think our time is a little bit gone. So I would just maybe like to invite Isaac and then Mordecai to maybe give us one thing you've taken from this conversation, or you give us your parting shots before we close this stream. Isaac?
Thank you. One thing, maybe a parting shot should be that I have is for artists, be Kenyan artists or refugee artists. We say art is art. There's no refugee. There's no Kenyan artist. There's no artist freedom. But one thing is very, very important, that talent alone is not enough. Artists need to realize that the business, understanding the business of art, we are in that particular space where you making art, developing material, generating music, and you have them in CDs and you stock them. The gathering that's in the shelf or hard disk, whatever. You do paintings, wall murals, and nobody recognizes it because probably there is an education aspect that is lacking in that. Art alone and the talent alone is not enough. Maybe we need to give more, put more into educating artists in the business of, and the basics of business in ability to identify markets for their art. I would want to also touch on what Stephanie mentioned, that this conversation about giving artists a platform is an error. There are certain contexts that it is not, and especially in the context of refugees where they are within the confines of a refugee camp, and the policies that are in place do not allow them to have those particular engagement with artists from other areas. They will need that particular platform so that they're able to also develop at least some wings to be able to stand on their own. So in that particular juncture, that's what I have to say. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Isaac. And I think to just speak from you and Enigma and even Rachel is there's an importance to balance between the platform and the business of art. we cannot discredit, a platform, because it's important. Without a platform, then what is art? But then at the same time, it's just not enough to give an artist a platform. It's important to also appreciate them for what they do. I would also like to welcome Mordecai. Give us your parting shot or one thing you have taken from this whole conversation.
Obviously, all this work would not be possible without partnerships and collaborations. And, it will be very important for us to mention that, we have had, this level of success because of, partnerships with, people like UNHCR, Internews, the PRM, which is a US state government for refugee migration, as well as the most important people who are the artists themselves. So the Queen Lisas, the Marcia Quartz, the Exile Keys production companies, and the many other production companies in Dadaab and Kakuma that are producing music, that are taking in artists, recording their music, taking the time to produce their music videos, and not just music. Of course, we have people in the design industry, in the graphic design industry. We have painters, our wall mural painters, our fine artists. All these people have been able to do what they're doing because of collaboration and partnerships and support from the community. So it's a big shout out to all these people, and of course for Refugee Poet for setting this up, allowing us to have a platform to speak about these things, and the conversation continues even beyond this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mordecai. Thank you so much, Isaac. Thank you, Enigma, Desmond. Thank you so much for giving us your time and just talking about art. And I think a 1 hour conversation is not enough to talk about the entirety of art. I think we need to set up another one and just talk about the business of art, and equip artists with relevant skills to take them out there and commercialize their art. I also thank everyone who's been here on the comments following. Thank you all so much for, following the conversation, commenting, asking your questions. Hopefully they have been answered. Please feel free to share any ideas you might have on how, more collaborations between host artists and refugee artists, can collaborate. From here, I would just like to say thank you guys so much. We just have one more conversation that is happening tomorrow, and the REFU series for this season will be over. And as we all know, it's all culminating to the World Refugee Day on Saturday, where we're going to be celebrating the World Refugee Day using art. And we at REFU Poets are proud to say that we have given our artists something. They have gone back with something in their pockets. At least they cannot say that we have used them. So be sure to tune in at that time at 6 p.m. REFU Poets at Facebook, at YouTube, at Instagram, and we'll be able to have a really good time. So let's meet again tomorrow at 11 a.m. From me right now, it's goodbye.
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 Bye.